This is just another episode of things that happened to Zach directly before the podcast starts. I was bending over to plug in the laptop, and then my pants ripped right at the crotch, which is where they always rip. My pants exclusively rip right at the upper thigh every time.
Good.
Yeah. So I changed in some other pants, and we are ready to roll. I don't know why.
Hey.
I don't know why it was pertinent for me to change, but I just thought that I would not be able to focus fully. I would just be bereaving and grieving my pants the whole time.
You know, I was gonna ask, because you said, hey, I ripped my pants, and then I immediately called you to start the show, and you didn't pick up. I was like, is he gonna fix his pants right now? This is a podcast. This isn't it's not the inauguration. He doesn't have to. But anyway, if that makes you feel better, I'm glad that you do. Your pants rip often? You said every time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's always so this is a backtrack story,
Sure.
but I have what Sam calls my dance pants.
Oh, yeah,
and
of course.
These, I still have those. I don't wear them as often. In fact, I'm wearing what I would call dance pants 3.0 right now, which are just dark, black jeans. But
Right.
anytime I wear dark blue jeans, no matter what, they always rip. I don't know what the science is behind that. I don't know where I could go to be getting some more just better jeans, I guess. I just think I
Right.
need to buy jeans that have, I don't know, sturdier materials, but then I feel like those are just really starchy and stiff, and I don't like that. So I think I'm just cursed to always buy a pair of pants and just have them rip just several months later in the exact same spot every time.
Now let's walk through this together. I think we can solve this. Did you make a wizard? Did you make a wizard angry?
I don't think I've made any wizards angry,
Okay.
but I probably have
That you know of.
that I know of.
That you know of.
But
So you can't
there
be sure.
there might be some pants related trickster god that is given power every couple of months that is just exclusively working on me right now, that I'm his main client. Or this is another idea. Someone is okay, I'll throw these pants out.
Yeah.
And someone is making a realistic voodoo doll of me wearing pants, and they'll just leave. They'll make it and just leave me alone for a long time. And then just right when they know that I'm doing something important, they will just rip those pants.
Sort of like a voodoo gaslighting. They're trying to make you think you're crazy with voodoo.
Yes. They're trying to make me have body dysmorphia and make me believe that I'm just ripping out of these pants because I'm putting on so much weight. But my thought process here is it's always the same spot that rips.
Sure.
Which I think is, and it's never traditionally when people rip their pants, it's on the butt. I think
Yes.
that's when you're watching movies or, a certain type of movie, Beethoven's Fifth or whatever.
Yeah, all the great Beethoven movies. Can I stop you for 1 second?
Yes.
So my wife is catching up on Game of Thrones. Can you hear the soundtrack very loud in the background? The soundtrack, the title sequence just ended. Could you hear it at all?
I did not hear it at all.
Okay, well, if any of the listeners get some spoilers for season 5 of Game of Thrones, I'm very sorry. I'm not going to do anything about it, but I'm sorry in advance. If someone says, "Oh no, I'm this character and now I'm dying," blah, like that,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's just the type of writing that you can expect from Game of Thrones that I've heard.
I'm explaining my plan all along, and actually I was a bad guy. Ah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was actually this person in disguise. I'm sorry in advance. I am not going to do anything about it because I don't know. She's trying to chill and worked all day. So I'm not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's just my name's Jon Snow and I'm the one who knocks. Stuff like that.
Yeah. You're caught up on. I'm glad you're caught up on Game of Thrones. That's super good.
Yeah. Dude, I'm so excited for Dragon show. I cannot wait.
Yeah. Dragon Kiss show.
Yeah. Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm caught up on it. That's why my wife is catching up.
Oh, okay. Man, I have not seen 1 second of that show. And
you need a Sherpa. You need a Sherpa to watch it. You really need someone to walk you through the first 4 episodes. It's a very confusing show at first.
yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I've heard that it is like, it tricks you by being about like what's the fantasy? There we go. It tricks you by being like fantasy light, but most of it is politics. That's what I have heard, which is something that I'm not necessarily into, but I know shows that I have watched, and you kind of, when you get wrapped up into the world, then you can very easily get wrapped up in the politics of those characters. So that I understand. Having this show be so popular around me, I have heard a trillion spoilers from it.
Bummer.
But just like all of this information was given without me looking for it. It popped up in my face. Like, people were just like, "Oh man, can you believe spoiler?" And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. So I know.
Yes and no. Yes, I can believe it, but also no, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I know a ton about Game of Thrones. I'm like very aware of, I think, just like the skeleton of the show, but
and also the skeletons in the show.
Yeah, but if you were to ask me like 2 follow-up questions on any character, I'd be like, "Uh-oh, sorry, I don't know anything about that."
You could probably do pretty good on a "is this person alive or dead" quiz, but not as far as like their motivation.
I feel like I could do very well on a BuzzFeed, like, "Who are you?" Like, I feel like I could angle it in the way to get Khaleesi or whatever her name is.
But she has a lot of names. Her name, it's actually a running gag on the show that she has a lot of different titles and names. But yeah, Khaleesi is one of them. She's the best.
Yeah, that
you would be lucky to get. Khaleesi. She's a very, very cool character. We're not going to talk about Game of Thrones because it's a kind of show that I would feel really bad if I spoiled, and I do not know how to talk about any of it without like, I literally don't know how to talk about any of the plot without spoiling it.
Yeah, well,
and the new season is coming out, the final season.
The final season.
Right. At this point, they've already made 3 new reboots of it and an animated series that I'm sure we love in the year 2028 when this episode comes out. But right now, in present day, they just released the trailer for season 8, and that's very exciting for me. Anyway, if you can hear it in the background, sorry, you get this show for free.
Yeah.
So we have 2 topics.
I think the first topic was me ripping my pants, so that's check.
Well, I've got some in the pocket. I got a couple. I'm coming at you. We've got our backup.
I did have some in the pocket, then I ripped those pants. So
and then they ripped right out of your pockets.
Yeah.
So Zach's banned from the podcast for that joke, and I'm just going to talk to the viewers. Anyway, so because our show is, we have one in the pocket forever, which is we can just talk about Matt Groening and The Simpsons, but I feel like we can just hold that one off for a rainy day. I feel like our rainy day topic is like, so I guess we should just talk about The Simpsons now, right? So like, I don't think that's today.
Yeah, so for those listening that don't know me, my knowledge of The Simpsons is infinite.
It is legion. It really is.
Yeah, I could talk about it forever. And up into preparing for this podcast, and you were talking about that, I was kind of researching less about the show Disenchantment, which is great. Well, so Disenchantment, I'm gonna say one thing about this, and I'm done forever
because this is our pocket topic.
Yeah. Disenchantment is like 5 okay episodes that lead you up into some really solid episodes.
Solid is a good way to put it.
Yeah, so like of all the shows that Matt Groening has ever done, this is the only one that is trying to do some semblance of narrative storytelling through the course of all the episodes as well. And like you can kind of tell he's been moving in this direction. So for example, The Simpsons, they built a universe and they have this little town in Springfield. And I was actually thinking about this. So I was in thinking about Matt Groening, I was trying to think through, it's like, if I were to plop down in Springfield right now, I could make my way around the town. Like, because there is a definitive geography of the town and it stays consistent. And other than that, that's like really, and like character motivations and like character like honor codes and things. That's like essentially the only thing that has stayed prevalent throughout The Simpsons. Futurama does a little bit of story arc and a little bit of narrative building.
Sure.
Where they just kind of, they almost like make fun of narrative building. Like when they do a joke about a previous episode, it's almost as if that joke is confined to that scene, that like almost doesn't matter. So I was thinking about that. And then Disenchantment is one of the only shows that it's like 4, I think, episodes where it just seems totally random. And then the 5th or 6th one is when it starts moving into like, oh, these are characters, there are consequences for their actions, and then we are going to move on from there. And I did not like Disenchantment, or I thought it was like fine, but I think when you have a big name like Matt Groening around it, it's like kind of hard to not relate it to Futurama or The Simpsons, even though if you go back and watch like Simpsons season 1 and Futurama season 1, they're like not great. But there is this, the Disenchantment won me over with one line, and it is when they meet this character who he tells this joke, and the joke is he says, you will go to the end of the world and you will find it and him and maybe yourselves along the way. It's actually the title of my book. And he pulls out a book that says Finding Yourself on the Way to the End of the World. And he says, well, this is actually less of a book and more of a letter to my father, which had me rolling. Like, that just sounds like something that like an amateur novelist would say, that like, oh, this actually really isn't a book, this isn't a memoir, it's more of like a letter to my father. Like just something like that. And then ever since then I was like, this show has me, I will watch it forever.
Okay, here's my one thing I will say about Disenchantment, and then we have to put this in the pocket. I understand that this show, if we do one thing, it is we say, oh, we'll just talk about this a little, and then it becomes the whole episode. But I promise this is my one thing.
Mm-hmm. And also we have to bring up Justice League. I'll just bring that up right now, and then we don't talk about it anymore.
It's very, very bad and stupid, and they made Wonder Woman bad. My one thing about Disenchantment is I read a lot of the criticism. I liked the show. I thought it was, I liked it for what it was. I thought it was good. It didn't blow my mind, but it was like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, that was my reaction to it. It was like, oh, this is like kind of funny, and like, sure, yeah. But I read a lot of the criticism of people like kind of fanboying out about it, where they're just like, I'm not a kid anymore, I'm sad. And a lot of the criticism I felt like focused around that it wasn't Futurama and that it wasn't The Simpsons, but also that more specifically that it wasn't a large cast of characters. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the criticism was, let me boil it down to this. A lot of the criticism of Disenchantment is, I'm mad this show isn't already having had happened.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't make sense. I'm saying it's stupid because it's a stupid criticism, right? Like I'm mad this hasn't already had happened. Like I'm mad that this show isn't 6 seasons in and there are 600 characters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's only 12 characters. It's like, well, there's only 8 episodes and they introduced 12 random characters and some of them are very silly. And like when you see them the first time, it's very silly. But then like, hey, 4 seasons into this show, when that guy comes back up, it's going to be really funny. And that's how Matt Groening makes shows, right? Like Hypnotoad is in 3 episodes and it's very funny. Like Hedonism Bot is in like 2 episodes, but it's really funny. And like if you just took him in as 1 episode, it'd be like, oh, that's a kind of funny joke, but whatever. But it's like, but what's funny is then seeing him in crowd shots when like robots are taking over the city. Like that's what's funny about. That's what makes it a world. And so a lot of the criticism to me, and there was, well, and like, you know, there was criticism of like, oh, well, the demon character isn't really developed yet. And it was like, I don't think you understand how a story works. You know what I mean? Where it's like, basically, it was just like, I'm mad that, well, his plot line hasn't resolved. I mean, that was some of the criticism. His plot line hasn't resolved. And it's like, it's a story. Like, the criticism resolved around this show isn't already a classic, and so I'm mad. And relating to what you said of like, if you watch season 1 of The Simpsons and you watch season 1 of Futurama, The season 1 of
Yeah.
The Simpsons is bad. Season 1 of Futurama is fine. But if you watched it in isolation, not knowing the rest of the show existed or not having seen the rest of the show, and then have to wait a year for season 2, you might not think that much of it either, right? When you
Yeah,
can binge
'cause
an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, even with The Simpsons, there's like the central 5 characters, and then you
Right.
like meet characters along the way who I don't even think that they had no intention of ever bringing them back.
Right.
Like originally in the original Simpsons thing, they were going to reveal that Krusty the Clown is actually Homer in disguise, which is dumb.
Yeah.
And they like very smartly like made him his own character.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think, and that's just once again briefly. That's not going to be briefly. I
know.
think that's
I'm
the
done.
way.
No matter what you say, I'm not going to respond. I'm
Yeah.
done after what you say. Okay.
But you're exactly right about the way that I think Matt Groening, his greatest strength is surrounding himself with people that are so smart they trick you into thinking that it's dumb. And like, so as you're going through The Simpsons, you're just like, oh, this is a bunch of dumb characters doing dumb things. But it's like, oh, like, but you can very much see there's a through line here of like, this is who they are. And like in Futurama, like, which is off the wall brilliant. But yes, the way that he traditionally has built his 2 shows is the way that you just talked about, which is like you're making a joke with your friends and you expound upon characters that you've come up with in the past. You expound upon things that you've done a long time ago. So the way that his like comedy really comes together is you build a universe and then you just live there. Like he made like New York and he made Springfield, and so you get to live in those places, and then when you get to meet those characters, like you get an idea of how they're going to interact with each other. And like characters that show up very seldomly, like from The Simpsons, you mentioned Hypnotate and Hedonism Bot, but from The Simpsons, I always think of Lionel Hutz, who is the lawyer character, and he is seen very few times over the course of the entire series, but every time he shows up, he hits it out of the park. Like every last time he's there, they just expound upon that character, and everything he does is like, yep, that's what that character would do in that situation. And so, yeah, like I totally get what you're saying, that like the main criticism of like Disenchantment is that it's not getting to what we like about Matt Groening already. And it's like, well, yeah, but you don't have the benefit of like years and years from now.
Good point, Zach.
Good point.
And
Thank
now,
you, Zach.
Moving on.
And another thing about Matt Groening.
No. I can't. I have a lot to say. Okay, one more thing. It's not even a like point of view. My favorite, not very often occurring character on The Simpsons is good old Gil, because he is, oh man, so funny. He makes me laugh every single time. Old Gil is hysterical. Hey Zach, do you have any like hobbies or side projects?
I have a couple of hobbies and side projects.
The reason I ask is because ostensibly our show is about self-improvement.
Yeah.
Because I'm obsessed with self-improvement through a lot of my side projects and working on different projects and stuff. And I was curious if you had any, and I was wondering what your sort of process of getting better. Like, how do you know you're getting better at them? What are they? First of all, I'm curious.
Well, I think that this is less of a side project and more of a side hobby, and things that we talked about in previous, like in the Abyss episodes of Get Better.
Sure.
Is I'm doing a lot of things. I think I'll just pick one, and the one that I'll use, and I'll use that as a template for how I'm getting better. I have been doing photography a bit with like 35 millimeter and like other types of film.
You have, of course, yeah.
And so I've been doing that, and a lot of my process of getting better is to I think just like to never assume that you are going to bring anything new under the sun, and just asking a ton of questions, like with people that have been doing it for much longer. And I think with photography, like my first couple of roles were all about just like making the pictures come out to actually look like pictures rather than just like blots of like light. and then from there working on just like different like philosophies of photography, and like constantly looking at things like that, and like learning from people that have been doing it for a long time about how to fill up the frame with things that you appreciate, and like capturing a moment in the way that tells a story of letting the people that see it feel what you felt, which sounds super obnoxious. But I think, but I think it's like, it very much is like a reasoning behind just like, for me, it's like, I love doing it because it is meditative and it allows me to slow down and to like put action to my thoughts rather than just me being an anxious mess all the time.
Sure.
And so when I'm out doing film, it's like, you don't just take pictures of everything. You look at something, and then like sometimes the only thought to be gained from it is, oh, this is cool, click. Or like sometimes the thought from it is, oh, this is going to like look like X, Y, and Z within the confines of this frame. And so you just try to, with each and every picture, try to think through what because you have to really think through like, what are you looking for and what do you want the audience to see, and how do you bridge the gap between those two things. So that's kind of like my process of getting better. Mostly is just constantly asking questions and always going out with people that have the ability to train, and like approaching it with a level of humility, but not humility in the way that makes me believe that I don't have a voice or an opinion to be heard.
Interesting. Is there any, when you say going out with people, is there anyone like, is there a particular artist that you follow, or is this just like people you know who also use 35 millimeter?
People I know that also shoot film. Those are the people that I go out with. But like one of the weird things, and this is definitely a side tangent. One of the weird things about photography that I've noticed, there is a growing trend of, especially on like blogs and Instagram and other mediums, there's a growing love of two types of photography.
Sure.
Portrait and street photography. People love street photography.
What is street photography?
Street photography is, you would go out kind of like, so with 35 millimeter, it's kind of difficult because of another Futurama joke I was going to bring up, but I won't. The observation principle. So you go with like a medium format camera, which is one, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but you look down into the viewing lens and then you take a picture of basically it's like people walking on the street. And essentially like a lot of people just like post up on a corner and then just like fill a frame with as many people as they can. Like they'll go out during parades, or they'll go out during like just busy work days and like try to, like a lot of it is like, I think it just sounds like super obnoxious. Another thing that people do is I've seen this a lot. They'll go out when like business people are on lunch or whatever. And so you get to see like busy business people like walking past street people and like, oh man, look at the difference in social class and just things like that. But mostly it's just like, oh, I really like the corner of this building, but I'm not going to just take a picture of the corner of this building. I'm going to take a picture of the corner of this building with like 90 people in front of it.
Interesting.
And then in that you kind of like, it's a way to have like a fly on the wall like view of the American experience.
I Googled street photography just to get like more of an idea. Mm-hmm. Every one of these photos is in black and white. I didn't Google black and white street photography. I just Googled street photography. I'm scrolling and scrolling. There's like one that's in color, but this one in color is of the photographer, so I'm not going to count that.
Yeah,
and I'm just going.
I was actually just about to say that. Like,
it's
if
crazy.
you take a street photo and it's not in black and white, you throw that in a fire. Like it's worthless. That's funny because I was recently talking to our mutual friend Alex,
of course,
and
frequent guest on the show.
Yeah, he had noticed that as well because I was like talking about growing trends of photography, and I was like, yeah, there's this big thing about street photography, and it was like, oh yeah, black and white street people photography, and I was like, that's the one.
But yours aren't because we're friends in real life, and I've seen your work. I totally. I mean, I guess I should have known. Like, of course you do photography because I see it all the time. You don't do black and white photography.
No. And I think that is more of a stylistic choice. I've thought about this. I would love to do There's two reasons why okay. I've learned that I'm essentially just, and I think everyone learns this in their lives. I'm just a baby version of my father, and everything that he was into, I'm also into. Because I was like, I showed him my camera, and he was like, "Oh yeah, the Nikon Nikromat," and I was just like, "What?" And then I handed it to him, and he was like, "Yeah, I had a Canon AE1 back in the day," and I was like, "What?" And I was like, "When?" He was like, "Oh, probably when I was your age, 25. And I was just like, what is happening? And he was like, yeah, what I used to do is I used to do black and white photography, and I had made a makeshift darkroom in my closet, and I would just like mix the chemicals together, and I would make my own prints with the photography that I was making." And then I was just like, what is happening? And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's super easy. You should definitely look it up." So like,
Do you do that?
no, I don't, not
okay.
yet.
You go to Chuck's or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I'm close. What's it called?
Yeah. No, it is Chuck's Photography, but that joke's for all my Louisville people.
We've already diagrammed the entire road on this podcast.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what Chuck's is.
This is a quick shout out to the person that develops my film, State Film Lab on Bardstown Road. Go there if you love your film.
Cool.
Yeah, so they're great, and they take an appropriate amount of time, I would say, to get your rolls back to you. Like, it takes like a week or so, and there are some places that will get you your roll back in like 24 hours, and it's like, oof, I could tell.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and it's just like, if you take pictures on like something that you really, really care about, it's like, oh, I'm going to take this to someone that's going to take a little bit more attention to it. And also I know the guy that runs the place, so we're cool.
You know Chuck? No, you know State?
Yeah, State. Yeah.
Mr. State.
Mr. State.
Robert State.
Yeah, Robert State. So, but anyway, yeah, I think that's like my next thing. However, one thing I've noticed when like, and this is another, like, to do photography, you also kind of have to lend yourself into the game a bit of like a portfolio, which is not something I'm trying to build. I don't know why I care about this so much.
That's a hobby, you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is like, you said it like helps with anxiety and it's meditative. Like, do you have a goal in mind? Because like I mean, this is all interesting, and I'm wondering kind of what are your metrics for success? Like, when do you know it's good?
My metrics of success are so this has happened a few times, and it has been very kind, and like things I would definitely have to follow up on. When you live in Louisville, you get to know a good bit of musicians, and when I show them my roles, are just like, oh, like I have had people approach me like, oh, can I use that for like a cover of one of my EPs, or can I use that for X, Y, and Z?
Weird.
And there's one musician I know that is like, oh, hey, let's like go out one day and just like take pictures. I'm trying to build this website, and I would like for you to like do my profile shots. And I was like, that's a very kind thing for you to say. Also, I'm extremely cheap. I'm $0.
Hey, maybe you can be one theme song's worth. Maybe that's how we get a theme song to the show that isn't Get Better by Bleachers, which is always the spiritual theme song. Hey guys, if you're listening to the show, before you turn it on, listen to Get Better by Bleachers, and that's where we got the title, and it's also my favorite song. So
that's your favorite song?
No, Hey Jude's my favorite song, but it's a very good song.
Okay.
Yeah. But Bleachers is the spiritual theme song. But if we could get a real theme song for some album art, that would be great. That'd be a good deal as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, the artist I'm talking about is a folk artist, so I don't know if that's our vibe.
I don't care. We just need something in the beginning that's not me going like starting. We need something else to start the shows.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to get off your thing. Your dude asked you about doing a shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think like that's a metric for success. But mostly it's that. I mean, also I'm dabbling in, and this is something I haven't really put forth in this. This is going out into the airwaves, so I might as well. If I say it out loud, that means it's in the universe. So I should try to put some effort towards it. I've also been trying to condense because I journal a lot, and I always try to condense my journals into ways that I could just not necessarily publish, but just like put out somewhere for just another like meditative purpose, as well as just because I think that I do, when I have the wherewithal to do it, have wise thoughts that I can put out, which is also a very 25-year-old thing to say.
Super. Yeah, it's definitely embarrassing, and I want to make fun of you, but I feel like you're going somewhere, so just go for it.
But I think just like putting writing out there, but not for the like it is never also like those are like photography and writing are two things that I do in a very therapeutic way, and I think that it's never. Like, I will never do it for the purpose of like, hey, check out my writing. It's about Digimon and how that relates to the human condition. So I'm not going to do anything like that.
Yeah.
But
you're not going to be the Digimon writer guy. That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And because if I be the Digimon writer guy, then I just like put myself in, like I have a type, and I'm like, oh no,
I'll tell you one thing that didn't get better. I can tell you didn't get an Ethernet cable. I can tell that's so hard because I cannot hear what you're saying.
Certainly did not.
Oh man, you're so. It just really it hurts my heart. It really hurts my heart. It's that's fine. Something Digimon. I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I believe you. But I get what you're saying. You're not trying to plug. See, I plug, and it's really embarrassing. I don't like to plug, and it gets embarrassing. Which is why I basically shut myself off from the internet, because I'll plug something and then be like, oh, well, yep, burn it all down. That was embarrassing. Goodbye. So I think not plugging is maybe a good idea, or maybe don't. I don't know. I don't really know how to do that. That's why I married a marketer, so that she can handle all of that for me and I don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, sorry. So you were probably in the middle of saying something, but I couldn't hear it. You cut out somewhere around Digimon.
Oh, I was just saying that basically I was just doing a joke about how I don't want to be typecast as the Digimon writer. If I write something about Digimon, then all my pieces have to be about Digimon. Next thing I know, I'm hired at BuzzFeed, and they're like, make some more Digimon pieces. And I'm just like, no.
You'd be like, why? No one likes Digimon.
No, my art.
Sure, that makes sense. That's interesting. Do you have some kind of like a schedule to it, or I like, is it just like when you feel it, or like when does this occur for you?
I did not hear that question. I'm so sorry.
Dadgummit.
All I heard
we can talk about how I got a new phone, I guess.
Hold on, say that question one more time. I really want to answer it. It felt sincere.
It was fine. No, I was just asking, like, if you just sort of go with what you feel, or if you have some sort of schedule to this. Like, how do you're not married, which turns out it's not that being married takes up a lot of your time. It's that being married really shifts how you want to spend your time. Like, man, I could go sit in a cafe and draw cartoons. That sounds fun, but I'd kind of like to watch Game of Thrones with my wife. Yeah, I'm going to go. So anyway, so when you're married, well, in my experience of being married, it really shifts the amount of free time you have to like work on side projects and stuff. And so I'm curious, do you just like have this like infinite time that you can be like, oh, you know what, on a whim, why don't I just go shoot some photos? Or is it a scheduled thing? Is it something that you like plan out and like are working towards?
That is definitely the difference between you and I. Is I don't have infinite free time. I think with the freedom of all of this free time, I have made a point to make myself very like schedulally available. So it's like, on Wednesdays I talk to you, on like Fridays I meet with this person, on Thursdays I meet with these people, and so like all of my days are like pretty busy. And I have days for errands and stuff, which is like weird. Like, I should not be busy based on like, if you saw like the things that I did, it's like, you don't do anything ever.
Right. Because you have like a job and then like another half job. And then like, you would think like, oh, well then I'm just free the rest of the time. And it's like, well, no, I'm busy.
Yeah. It's because I've made myself so available to everyone. So it's usually when if I know my week schedule, I know that like X and like I know that whatever's happening, and then I'll make a point to be like, oh, then I'm gonna go out. Like if I like say on like a like a Sunday or so, I'll know what my schedule is. I go, oh, like on Thursday, I have this whole afternoon free. Like that'll be great to go like shoot photos. Like, what's the weather like? Oh, it's not raining for the first time in 9 months. That's awesome.
God.
And then like I have different places that I like know about that I have like written down in a little journal that I have of like places that I would like to go and just like do some test shots before. Because I always like to do test shots before I put like a human subject in it, because like if I go there with them and I'm like, well, what's the light? Then I look like a dummy.
Oh, wait a minute. Slow down. So your photos that have people in it, that is, other than like shooting for an EP or whatever, is that planned? Or I just assumed that you were with this person and did this.
No,
This is like a planned excursion. Oh, interesting.
All of the photos that you see people in them have been, I've gone to that location beforehand, taken a photo of it, looked at what it looked like, and then imagine it with a human subject in the frame, and then I went back with them.
Interesting. That's cool. I didn't realize it was so much of a process. I don't know. I don't know what I assumed. I guess that's why I'm asking. I like all your photos. They're very good, but I had never thought about it. So it really is like a dedicated hobby that you're putting time into.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like as much time as like I think is necessary for a hobby. It's one of those things where, especially when people ask you to take a picture of them, because like the people that I have on my feed that have asked me, it's usually like it's a huge honor for someone to like be like, hey, I like the way that this looks and I trust you with your judgment. And so you want to come at it with some sort of like either professionalism, or you want to make them feel that it's like, hey, you can trust me with this. Like, I'm not just messing around. Like, I'm going to ensure that this looks good because you trust me, and I'm going to put in the work beforehand to make sure that like I'm worthy of this trust.
Interesting.
Because I don't know if that's like me not being in the moment or whatever, but I think it's just more of like when you have someone do something for you, I've always feel that it's better when you can tell when you're in the hands of someone that knows what they're doing versus when you're in the hands of someone that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know what you mean by in the moment, but I mean, that just sounds respectful. I think that's just I mean, you're being a professional, even though it's a hobby, like you are being a professional. My trick is whenever I show up to somewhere, I just print out stuff. Like whenever I'm on set, oh my gosh, people are like, oh, okay. Like you just print like on, I like grip or like sort of, I don't know, for frequent guest of the show, Andrew, I will like work on his sets sometimes because he's a filmmaker. And one time he asked me to, I don't even remember what the job title was, but it was just like a helping hand. Like it was a very like,
yeah. He asked you to spell Valentine's.
Ugh, and I failed at it. Not that set. This is a more recent set than when we were in college. But no, like it was like there was a cameraman, there was Andrew, there was I think another cameraman, and there was me who was just sort of like, hey, I need you to kind of do all the other stuff. So I was like a grip. Yeah, I was basically just a grip, and I just showed up with paperwork of like the schedule of the day, of like I'd printed out the schedule and the locations, and I was like had like a little like portfolio with me. I was like, yeah, and he's like, oh, do you do this a lot? And I'm like, I kind of do this at my job. And he's like, oh, would you want to do more of it? And I was like, yeah, sure, it's fun. And he's like, okay, yeah, great. And I'm like, great. And like it was one of those things that was like I just literally printed stuff out, but people love it. People like they see like, oh, you've put any thought into this. Awesome. I love that. Thank you. It's like, oh, great. I did put thought into this. Thank you.
Yeah, my next move is to show up with them and just have a clipboard, and it's like whether or not the clipboard has anything on it, just have a clipboard, and just like, ooh, clipboard.
Or get a funny hat. I feel like that'll give you really some photography, or like a look in your eyes, like you're looking off at the sunset, but you're kind of like pissed that the sun exists. Like that kind of like, oh, you would be setting. That kind of look. I feel like you'll really come across as a photographer.
Yeah, or like just always having awareness of the sun. Just like we're walking, I stop for a second, and I look at the sun, and I just go, we have to go now. Yeah, with the light, sure. No matter what they suggest, like, oh, should I stand over here? Yeah, with the light.
Yeah. No matter what, no matter if it's good or bad, you say with the light yes or with the light no. It doesn't matter. It's just like, but Zach, we're indoors. Yeah, but with the light. Okay. I feel like that'll really help you get across.
Yeah, I'm just looking at people like behind the counter and just being like, is there any way we could turn these on brighter?
And then could you make them a little dimmer? That's where they were before. Yeah, but like, but better. Okay, thank you. Do you have a bounce?
Yeah.
Okay, no. All right. They don't even have a bounce.
You can you have a bounce? Look around. No one has a bounce.
No one has no one.
Okay.
All
right.
In the whole the whole place. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, nope. All right. Well.
You ever been to Chuck's? As an animator, I'm just working on looking very, very tired all the time, and that seems to be coming across well of like, oh, how's it going? I'm very tired and I draw a lot. Great. So you're an animator. Yeah, I'm very tired and I draw a lot. Okay, great. Good job. And that's sort of my oeuvre that I'm trying to cultivate is just like, oh, he looks like really, really, really tired and wondering if he's made good choices in life. And it's like, yeah, that's an animator. He's doing it. He's doing it right now. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And I think you've been doing that for a while, so that's great.
God, yeah, I know. Probably since you've met me. I think at some point I think maybe sophomore year, of college, I made this decision of like, oh, time in life is limited. And I don't know how this occurred to me, but it was like, time in life is limited. There are lots of people who try to succeed in film, and a wide majority of them don't. Partly because of luck. There are also lots of systematic things that keep certain people out. I don't apply to any of those groups because I'm a white dude and life is unfair. But like there are a lot of people who have the same advantages I do who still don't make it, often because they just don't put enough time in. They just don't try, or they weren't in the right place at the right time. I mean, there is luck involved. But anyway, and then I just adopted this fear. This deep in my heart fear of like, you need to be working all of the time or you will never make it and you will end up like in an office staring at a cube wall wanting to die. And then I've just carried that fear every single day ever since, and it's been how long have we been out of college? It's been a long time.
That's good.
It's not. It's super unhealthy.
Oh, yeah. But it's okay because it's not like you have anyone in your direct surrounding that's going to be affected by it. Oh, shoot.
Oh, wait, I'm married. No, it's funny because what got me thinking about this is I actually just recently had to make a pretty big paradigm shift of like, okay, for the first time since that moment, I have to like block off time to say like, no, I am going to sit and watch TV and not be worried about work and like set out really defined times for my hobbies. Because my wife was like, you are not okay right now. Like you're so tired and exhausted and stressed, and you really, because luckily my client work has picked up a lot recently, and I've been drawing a lot more, and so I've got I like have more things filling my time, and I've just become a zombie. And she was just like, you need to, hey, you're gonna die. And I was like, yeah, no, I know, that's why I have to work so much, because one day I'm gonna die.
We're all gonna die.
No, like you're gonna die like soon. Like you need to really. And so I had to change my work habits, because I was like, yeah, I guess she's probably right. I guess I am sort of killing myself with the work I'm doing. So recently I've tried to scale that back.
That's one of the benefits of being married, I've heard, at least.
Yeah, having someone who cares about you. It's super great.
Having someone just like always to your left or your right, being like, oh, and I don't know about this.
Yeah. Nah, she's a bright girl too, so she's got a lot of like, hey, don't do that, or like, hey, go do that, because there are a lot of opportunities where it's like, I want to do something, but then I'm just like petrified with like fear of like, oh yeah, but I'm gonna apply to that and then they're gonna come to my house and yell at me and scream in my face and tell me I'm stupid. And she's like, well, that's a dumb thing you just said, like just apply to the job. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that makes more sense what you said, right? Because like I'm just mostly powered by fear. That is, if it wasn't clear by the episode where I talked about my anxiety, basically my whole life is governed by fear. Some of that fear moves me in a positive direction. A lot of that fear moves me in a negative direction. That's sort of where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It's hard because self-improvement is good and something I like, but it is something that can also, I mean, like, there's obviously a difference between being content and being complacent. And sometimes, like, I'm so like fighting so hard against complacency that I start like eroding contentment, and that's very hard to tell the difference at that point of like, okay, wait a minute, maybe you don't need to be working 16 hours a day, like maybe that's actually not healthy, like, but it's like, oh, but I don't want to be stuck and I need to keep moving forward so I can move to the next step in my career and get better and da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, but you are tearing yourself apart, so maybe chill for a minute.
Yeah,
which is hard for me because I've built up all the muscles of like keep going, try harder, but I have not built a lot of the muscles of like just chill for a minute. So I'm not very good.
Oh,
at
I think it's where you and I differ almost exactly.
Oops.
Oopsie. Mine is very much placed on complacency, which is great. But contentment is it's a frame of mind thing.
Probably.
Was this what we wanted to talk about? Was this the thing that we nixed Matt Groening for?
Yeah. Because I wanted to know. Well, I thought like, what we've done. We've warmed up. Now, granted, we recorded 20 episodes. This might be episode 8.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, we recorded 30 episodes. This might be episode 8. But I thought like, hey, we've warmed up the audience. They know who we are. We should get to the topic.
Yes.
Which is getting better. Like, there's no reason not to. We have thoughts about it. I have thoughts about it. I wasn't bringing it up because, like, as of 2 days ago, I had to really change my paradigm on, like, what self-improvement looks like. That was not why I brought it up. It was just sort of like, oh, I feel like Zach agreed to this show. He must have thoughts about self-improvement. And, like, he's also in his 20s in the 2010s. So, like, he doesn't have any money and probably has a side job. I don't have any money and have a side job. Like, none of us have any money and have a side job. So, like, he's got to have some thoughts about, like, his side jobs and what he does for money. Or for fun. I guess all your side jobs, being a DJ, being a photographer, are all for free, but...
Yeah. I'm not necessarily. I feel like that is something that I should put a little bit more effort into. Is like the knowing my monetary value of things, because I'm usually just like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll do this for free or whatever. It's like building because now I've got to the point where I'm on some form of a schedule, like posting my photography as if I'm building a brand, but it's like, what are you building a brand for? Nothing.
Right. That's what I was curious about. That was sort of where my questions were going, was like, so what does success look like in this situation for you? I mean, for me, I know it's like, oh, you get a job at Disney, or even you get a job at a studio in town. You know what I mean? Like that would look like success for me. I don't really know. I mean, you've got other things that you do that I guess would look like success. I'm not sure if you want to talk about, but like as far as your photography or whatever in your life, things you are trying to get better at, because you also have like other jobs that you do, but whatever you like to talk about getting
other
better
things
at.
I volunteer doing and stuff. Yeah.
Is that volunteering? Never mind. We're probably talking about two different things. It doesn't matter.
Probably.
Yeah, like what does success look like?
I think it's interesting because I think success for photography is I think for right now, like there's different stages you get to, and I think that as you're moving along in the way of I guess like building yourself in that way. I think that for me, success right now is just being finding affirmation, I guess, which is an odd thing to say. Also, the other thing now I know. The other thing that you were talking about was my stuff as doing stuff as a teacher, and there's different. I was saying volunteer because a lot of the things that I do, either through my like church or through community or through other organizations is mostly like volunteer work. And I think that now I have been spending a lot of my time in the way of doing teaching with people one-on-one or in like smaller groups, which has been super great. And I think that the two ways of that is, one, like you kind of have to put yourself into like thoughts all the time. So for example, there is this song speech thing that Sam and I listen to, or I listen to quite frequently. It's called Be Sure to Wear Sunscreen, which is a speech. Yeah. A speech by Baz Luhrmann, who directed Great Gatsby and other such films. And at one point, he makes a point about nostalgia, which is, he says, like, advice is just repurposed nostalgia. And basically what he's saying is, you go through something and it is your job to repurpose it and clean it up and then give it to someone else. And whether or not they take it, that's on them, but it's something that you offer to people freely. So I think that teaching, especially when you're teaching, it's less about, for me at least, the subject matter and more about creating like the ability of thought and the ability to make cognitive decisions, especially in a place like Louisville, where it's more city like oriented than where I grew up. And so
certainly.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of my childhood, a lot of my high school and into college experiences were based on how much I knew, not about how I knew how to apply it. And I feel that that was an incorrect way of approaching education, because it's like I guess you're teaching them about, like, you know, some history thing. You're teaching them about some, like, for one of the things I do, I go through a book weekly with this guy, and it's like you're teaching them about what the book is about, but really what you're doing is you are giving them repurposed advice from your past in the way of helping them understand what it feels like to be an adult, or what it feels like to have to stand up for your principles or your morals or what have you.
Sure.
But it's like, you just want to like kind of toe that line, because it's really easy to just stick to the subject matter. But I think one thing that I'm approaching and like trying to get better at is to like derive less of my time from that and more about what it means to apply the things in a way. Like, so for example, when teaching history, one thing that I've learned that is much more important than the history itself is that everything in life is an equal and opposite reaction. And so there is context for everything, and the story is always more complicated than you give it license to be. So I think that when you're teaching that, especially in the time when I was doing it in a high school in rural Kentucky, it was always less about the subject matter itself, but more of like creating in these students the ability to think through how that this puts itself in their own life, in the way of like, you always have to understand context first. And in that, you're going to be a more well-rounded person. I feel like I talked for a long time, and I don't really know if there was a point to all that.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, the reason
or whether or not you even heard me.
No, you did cut out a lot there at the end, but I think I understood generally what you were saying. You should really get an Ethernet cable. But I got most of it right up until the end. The reason I was shy about asking about the teaching thing is because I just didn't know if that's something you wanted to bring to the podcast. But no, I mean, that makes sense as a metric of success, and it is interesting to hear your thought process of like how to develop it and how to turn it into something better, how to get better at it, how to you should.
So I think, like, so for example, like tracing it all the way back, like when I was talking about my writing and like the ability, if like I wanted to publish my writing or like just even put it out there, it's the way that I write is basically that. It is like take some, like, usually they'll kind of follow a similar pattern where I'll take something from pop culture and then I will kind of break it down to its merits. And because it's like when people hear song lyrics they repeat over and over again, I hear like movie quotes and like TV quotes, and I'll just like repeat them over in my head over and over and over again until I've derived a new meaning from it. And I think that, like, for me, it's like I went through this experience and I'm just giving this advice away for free. And like, this is like, and also in a way of kind of documenting how to me it feels being in, like, as you said, being 20 something in the 2010s, and how we can like better relate to each other in the way of like just handing each other advice for free. And I think that it's like one of the things that you do in writing is it's one of two things. You can get so far into your own self that you think that it's like, I'm the most brilliant person in the whole world, or you get so far into the example you're trying to make that you don't really draw the connection. And I think that's just one thing that I feel that I'm not too great at yet. And I feel that almost like, because one of the reasons I'm all over the place. One of the reasons why I started publishing my photography in the first place was because I thought it was something that I wasn't good at, and I wanted to put it out there as a way of it having less power over me. Because it was like these are just things that either just burning a hole in my phone or my pocket, and by having them in here, like, they always had this way of like haunting me, of like, as long as they exist where people can't see them, they're safe. And then in that way, it's like you kind of start believing the lie of like, and the reason, like, it's good that you keep them away from people because no one would like them. Like, the things you do aren't of value, So I started publishing them as a way of like getting rid of them and putting them out in the world as a way of being like, whether or not you like it, this is something I'm proud of. And here you go. How you take it is how you take it, but this is more for me than it is for you. And then getting a positive response back from that has been great, and like really helping me push away the lie that I have nothing to say. And so I think the very next step is doing stuff with writing or something else in the way of having that have less power over me.
Say, also, I won't ruin it, but all of Zach's captions are they're captions. They're captions for sure. I'm just gonna. I figure at the end, since we were talking about our stuff so much, we could plug our. I only have an Instagram, so that's all I can talk about. But we could sort of. I feel like it would be weird to go this whole way and not ever say what your Instagram is. So you should do that. But yeah, for all the viewers out there, you should go check out Zach's Instagram, and it's something. The pictures are good for sure. But yeah. So where can people find you?
At one Zach Johnson, not one like the number, but one like ONE, ZACHJOHNSON. And for what it's worth, I put a lot of thought into my captions. They don't just come out of nowhere. They are all very pointed.
You did not put a lot of truth. Anyway, you can find me at, I actually just changed it while we were on the show because I realized, like, oh, if I'm going to change this, I'm going to need to do it now because audio is forever. So you can find me at Sam Cherry Animation. Is it animation or animations? Who knows? It used to be Sam Cherry VFX until halfway through Zach's story just a second ago. And the reason for that is a kind of a story for another time about how I came to animation and how I just have like sort of fallen and failed into somewhat of a career. But yeah, Sam Cherry Animation, singular. That's where I'm at on Instagram. You can also email the show at meetthefuckers2fuckedup@gmail.com. We will never change that, ever.
Of course,
ever.
always.
And we don't have a website because I think the websites are stupid. Also, okay, I think every time I hear this on a podcast, I think I need to mention this on the show. Hey, viewers, you know what I'm never going to say to you? You can find us wherever podcasts are. You know why? Because you're listening to a podcast. So I know you know where podcasts are.
Yeah, you found us.
Like, you know where they are because you're listening to one now. And unless things have changed a lot in 2022 and this is being broadcast over some kind of state radio system that's like playing over megaphones in the streets, like, you know where you can find us? Where you're listening to us right now. So just subscribe in whatever you're in, or don't. I don't know. I think that's...
Yeah, you know, you got the implant and your state sanctioned microchip in your skull. Just blink twice to subscribe.
It's baffling. It's like if in TV shows at the end of the show they said, and remember, you can watch our show on wherever you find TV shows. Like, you're on a TV right now. Like, I know where shows are because I'm watching you. So anyway, you can find us where you already found us, right here, right now. Cool.
All
right.
See
See you bye forever.